political system. All right, let's go back to President Trump's travel ban. We can talk to Noor Zafar in New York. She's an attorney specialising in immigration at the Centre for Constitutional Rights. Thank you for talking to us. What is your opinion then of this latest travel ban that is due to come into effect in, what, 30 minutes from now?
Well, I mean, it is still a travel ban, and I think that's the unfortunate fact of the Supreme Court's ruling is instead of upholding the almost unanimous injunctions that the lower courts had placed on President Trump's ban, the Supreme Court has allowed the ban to stay in place unless people can show that they have a, quote, bona fide relationship with the United States.
And that's the key, isn't it, is that the onus will be placed upon those applicants to prove that they have a close relationship with either family members or with a business or an educational institution in the United States.
Precisely, yes. The onus is going to be placed on these individuals to show documentation or some sort of other evidence to the embassies and consulates in their home countries that demonstrate these close relationships. And the Trump administration released guidelines that both the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security are implementing that define this close relationship very, very narrowly. So it only really applies to immediate nuclear family members and in-laws. So, for example, and it's also very arbitrary, right? So, for example, a in-law is considered a bona fide relationship, but someone's grandmother or grandfather is not. So I think what we're going to see is in the coming months and weeks, we'll see perhaps more litigation really trying to define and figure out what exactly this bona fide relationship is.
Indeed, and it strikes me that that is possibly where a legal challenge could focus, because it's a very sort of Eurocentric definition of close family, isn't it?
It is, and it's actually in contravention to international law and refugee law, which tends to define these relationships more broadly. And it's also much narrower than the relationships that the Supreme Court highlighted in its ruling. So the government definitely is really trying to constrain immigration from these countries, and we see that in the way that it's interpreting this language.
Of course, Donald Trump says that this is one way of keeping the United States safe. Do you believe it will?
Absolutely not. And again, that's the unfortunate part about the Supreme Court's ruling is that the lower courts understood that at the end of the day, this ban was not about national security, but it was about keeping Muslims out of the country. And, allowing someone's brother in, but not allowing someone's grandmother in is completely arbitrary. And I mean, it's really difficult to indicate how that serves the interests of U.S. national security.
And ultimately, of course, the legality of it will be decided in October when the Supreme Court reviews the travel ban again.
Yes, so in October, if the ban is not moot by then, the Supreme Court is going to rule on the merits and decide whether the substance of the ban is constitutional and it can be allowed in perpetuity, or if it violates the Constitution and must be struck down.
And what's your opinion of that? Do you think it will hold? Do you think the Supreme Court will rule in favour of this travel ban?
I think it's going to be close. And again, it was disappointing to see that all 9 justices, allowed the ban to stay in place, except for people with bona fide relationships. And we saw the 3 conservative justices who concurred, indicated that were this issue to be adjudicated on the merits, that they would likely uphold the ban in its entirety and find that it is constitutional and that it does not impermissibly discriminate against Muslims. So I think just kind of reading this ruling that came down on Monday, it's going to be a close call for sure.
Noor Zafar, thank you very much indeed.